Hoplites were the citizen soldiers of ancient Greece. They dominated warfare in ancient Greece from the 8th to the middle of the 4th century BC. They were primarily militiamen, not professional soldiers. Every male citizen within an ancient Greek city-state or polis was expected to provide and bear his own arms for war. Those arms generally consisted of a spear, shield, cuirass, helmet, greaves, and sword. Hoplites generally fought side by side in the phalanx, though the equipment, training, and tactics of hoplites evolved through their centuries of use, until they were phased out for other types of soldiers like phalangites. The ectromoi were swift, lightly armored hoplites who fought alongside their heavier armored brethren during the Greek classical age from the 5th to the 3rd century BC. They were used to counter skirmishers and other ranged troops like peltists and Persian archers. To aid them in chasing down archers and other skirmishers, they wore little armor, usually nothing more than a hoplong style shield and a helmet of either the Attic, Chalcidian, Phrygian, or Pelus style, though besides their light armor they were armed in a similar style to other hoplites with a dory-type spear and a sword. In battle they fought alongside their fellow hoplites in the phalanx until they were needed to chase down skirmishers. Xenophon used them extensively to chase down Persian archers as he marched his 10,000 through Persia. It is unknown how they were selected. They could have been selected from the fastest citizens of a polis, or they could have simply been poorer citizens who couldn't afford the full armor of a hoplite. But how do you think they were selected? The soli were skirmishers used by the ancient Greeks during the classical age from the 5th to the 3rd century BC. Though they never made up the bulk of any ancient Greek army, they could make all the difference, like when the Athenians used them in the Battle of Spectrae to defeat the Spartans, one of the few times that the Athenians defeated the Spartans in a land battle. There were three primary types of soli: javelin throwers known as peltists, bowmen known as toxodai, and slingers known as spendonatai. They were usually armed with nothing but their weapons, though peltists usually used shields, often of the Thracian style, and sometimes they might wear helmets of either the Phrygian or Pelos styles. Because they wore little armor, they avoided direct combat and instead harassed the enemy formation. They came primarily from three groups: poor citizens, slaves, and foreigners. Peltists were a type of skirmisher or sailor used by ancient Greek armies from the classical into the Hellenistic era, though they are most well known by the ancient Greek use of them. Their equipment and tactics originated in Thrace, and they were used by other peoples, including the Persians. They were mostly unarmored, besides a simple helmet and a Thracian-style crescent shield. They fought from a distance with javelins, though they did usually carry a sword or axe for close-quarter combat. Though they couldn't stand toe-to-toe with heavy infantry like hoplites, they could fight hand-to-hand with other skirmishers, as they had an advantage with their shield and helm. The ancient Greeks primarily used them to harass the enemy phalanx and to chase down retreating enemies. They played a key role in the Athenian victory over the Spartans at the Battle of Spectrae, and their use is a prime example of combined arms use in ancient Greece. Toxodai were archers who played a key role in classical and Hellenistic Greek warfare, even if they were frowned upon at times. They were usually entirely unarmored. They were armed with a short composite bow, a short sword or knife, and sometimes a small shield that may be strapped to their arm. They most frequently came from the poorer classes, foreigners, and slaves, like most Siloi. For example, the force of Scythian slave archers that the Athenians used in battle and as a police force during the classical period. In battle, they fought as skirmishers alongside peltists and other Siloi. Despite the fact that Toxodai were often viewed as cowards, like Paris from the Iliad, they were crucial in many battles, like the Battle of Spectria, where they helped the Athenians defeat the Spartans. And some Greeks, like the Cretans, were famous for their archers. Svedonatae were slingers who fought as skirmishers in classical and Hellenistic armies. They were unarmored and armed with a sling, knife, and maybe a small shield. Though they had the cheapest equipment of all ancient Greek soldiers, they still played a vital role in battle. Slings can pack a punch to harm a man even through armor, and slingers could carry more ammunition than any other soldier of the time. They could even pick up stones to use as ammunition if they ran out of pre-made ammunition. Though cast lead sling bullets were always better than stones picked up off the ground, for they were heavier for their size and more uniform and thus easier to aim. One could even mark them with fun phrases like "catch this." It was even said that a well-trained slinger could outrange the best archer, though getting a well-trained slinger was no easy task. Though if an ancient Greek city-state was looking for good slingers to fill out their ranks of sailors, they couldn't go wrong by hiring them from the island of Rhodes. Hippias were the cavalry of archaic and classical Greece from the 6th to the 3rd century BC. They should not be confused with the Spartan Hippias, who were the royal guard of the kings and primarily heavy infantry. Traditional Hippias were made up of aristocrats who could afford their own horses, though some city-states like Athens subsidized the maintenance of those horses. They were always few in number and primarily served the support role of harassing skirmishers, chasing down fleeing enemies, and covering retreats. Because of their role and the lack of saddles and stirrups in ancient Greece, they were generally lightly armored, wearing just a helmet and breastplate or helmet alone, though there are a few depictions of Hippias using shields. Though because ancient Greece lacked stirrups, they generally refrained from using shields so they could use both hands to wield their lance and to control their horse. They were known for the use of the lance, the kopis sword, javelins, and even occasionally the bow. Their use increased throughout the classical period, as the need to chase down skirmishers in battle grew. By the end of the classical period, they even began to be used to crash into the sides of the phalanx to break it up, and even the Spartans began to use traditional hippias. Those Spartan mounted hippias were known to be the worst, while the Thessalonians hippias were known to be the best. Well, the best before the Macedonians came onto the scene.